What's up, folks? I had the honor of having Nick Hamlin on the show. He's a veteran, and he's running for the Maine House of Representatives, District 49. He wants to make sure that the property tax we have here in the state of Maine is nowhere near as burdensome as it is now, make sure our education is the greatest it can possibly be, and make sure that offshore power isn't getting in the way of our lobstermen. What's up, folks? It's absolutely fantastic to have Nick Hamlin here today. Just a second, I'm going to give him a chance to introduce himself. We are making sure that we have as many Republican victories in the state of Maine as possible, and we need to get someone like Nick Hamlin elected. Go ahead and give yourself a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah, so my name's Nicholas Hamlin. I'm running for District 49. That's the back half of Saginaw County. That includes Georgetown, Woolwich, West Bath, Phippsburg, and of course, Arousik. And the reason I'm running is honestly because I started looking around. So by heart, you can see I'm a beekeeper, and if I had my way, that's all I would ever do is just hang out in the apiary with my bees. But I started paying attention a little bit more and a little bit more. And my wife and I are going through the process of adopting our niece, so she's in high school, which makes us pay attention a little bit more and all of a sudden, I realized that the state of Maine somehow got, there's an image of what Maine is, what we all grew up believing it was, and then there's the reality of what it's become, and it's almost night and day. And I thought, holy cow, what are we doing about this? So I started thinking about what was going on, and at the time they were voting on things like LD 227 and National Popular Vote, and I kept writing my representative saying, why'd you vote this way? And I really didn't feel that my representative knew, I felt like they were voting party line.
Sure.
And I thought, well, that's not really what's best for Maine. I like some people out there will say, I don't care where a good idea comes from. And I believe in that. That's what I like to think about Maine first. If I'm running on the Republican platform, that's great. That's because there's a reason for that. But if a good idea comes from the left, that's not put it down just because of where it came from. If it's good for Maine, it's good for Maine. And that's where I think a lot of people are getting lost in the whole political divide. And then the reason that the majority of my county are undeclared voters. They're not Democrat or Republican, because a lot of people just get sick of the noise and the extremes, and they forget that we all got ties that bind us together. We're all neighbors. We all pay the same high taxes. We all want what's best for our kids, I hope, at the end of the day at least. But it used to just be a difference on how we got there. I don't even think we all agree on where there is anymore. It was a video I saw with Chuck Norris, who said he used to be a Democrat and now he's a Republican. Was a Republican. God rest his soul, but he said that the left him, and if JFK was alive today, he'd be a Republican.
Yep.
And it was really, really interesting to hear a lot more people start to make that shift. Even Bangor Daily News recently did an article stating that the registrations for Democrats have plummeted while the registrations for Republicans have climbed. It's a paradigm. We're seeing a big shift. And people are waking up. Nobody likes to be ripped off. And we're all getting ripped off. So that's another tie that binds us together. Before we can figure out how we want to get to where we want to go, let's make sure our foundation, we all start off on equal footing. We're not getting ripped off. Our money's going to where we expect it to be going. It would be one thing if if our kids were somewhere in the top 5 in the nation for our schools, but they're not even close. So the amount we're paying in taxes is obviously not going to where it needs to be. And I'm tired of this attitude of, well, if we just throw more money at it, maybe that'll fix it. And it's obviously not working. It's obviously we need a different way of doing things. So I'm running as a Republican because I believe the Republican Party this day and age is the answer. And in 2026, it is the answer. And it can definitely save Maine from our it's like we're speeding towards our demise. It's ridiculous.
Sure. Now, you've talked about a shift, not just specifically in party, but a shift from where Maine used to be and what we thought it was to what it is now. Could you further develop on what that shift looks like? I'm only 21. You're a little bit older than me. You might be able to give some more perspective from what Maine was back in the day.
Well, so I grew up in Portland, Born and raised in Portland, and to very humble beginnings. So I joke around that I never really left Cumberland County. I never really had a reason to leave Cumberland County. Everything was right there. You didn't even need a car. You had
Sure.
public transportation. You could take a cab. Nowadays we have Uber everywhere. But back then, one of the coolest things that I remember growing up about Maine was that if you were driving around downtown in the middle of the winter and your car got stuck, people would come out of the woodwork out of nowhere just to push your car. It was great. You didn't even have to find help. People saw you stuck and they just came over and helped. And that was the kind of, you see somebody waiting to get out in traffic, you slow down and you let them out. Like that was the kind of Maine that I grew up with. And I think it's gotten distracted. I think we've been pitted against each other for too long, and it's just kind of made everybody raw. Again, I don't want to look at anybody as this or that, or even I don't even like the word constituent. I like the word neighbor. I like community-based events and activities and brainstorming. I don't want to be, oh yay, the Republicans got 51%, so I won. I want to be, hey, these people understand as a community the direction we need to go.
Sure. That's a good message of unity. We definitely need to do everything we can to back each other as neighbors. In terms of goals, say you get elected to Augusta, what would be, say, your top 3 priorities?
So they're all kind of related to each other, and they all have to do with affordability. I know that word is thrown around; it's like a 4-letter word these days. but honestly, okay. So you've got property taxes. Property taxes crush Mainers. They do all the way around. And you say, hey, well, if we cut property taxes, then how are you gonna pay for schools? And then you're looking at schools, and I say, our schools are not producing right now. Okay, so that has to change. If we took, there's different estimates, $20,000 to $25,000 a year that we spend per student in the state of Maine. If we took that money, and not all of it obviously, but if we took that money and gave it to the parents instead and said, here's your voucher, go to the school that you wish, and take that money with you to that school, all of a sudden schools become competitive. Now they're going to need your money. They're going to have to work towards it, and then you back that up with better training for teachers, because I believe that's also a key element. Yep. You can't expect miracles from nothing. You've got to give them the foundation to be successful as well. So if we have good training and a good reform of our education system, Maine doesn't even use an evidence-based curriculum. There are so many out there that you could actually look and say, hey, that's working. I love to say this about everything, really. We have 49 examples out there of the other states of what works and what doesn't work. So we don't have to really reinvent the wheel. We can look at a state and say, hey, that's working. Everybody's talking about Mississippi these days and how well they're doing and how cheaply they've done it. Well, how do we implement that in Maine? Or how do we implement the winning aspects of it? All I can tell you is that what we're doing is not working. And there's methods out there that do work. So it makes sense that we would want what's best for our kids again. So that's an education reform, that's a tax reform. And the tax reform is easy. You don't have to invent new laws for that one either. You raise the homestead exemption, and there you have it. So those are the 2 top one. And then with that, of course, is energy. Energy, everything starts with energy. The production of energy. First of all, like every other industry in Maine, is overregulated. They've recently even enacted stricter climate regulations just so that we cannot produce our own energy in Maine. You cannot meet those super stringent regulations that are absurd and produce energy. And it's by design. It forces us to buy energy from out of state. If we can stop with these regulations that do no good and cut it back, just like in the housing industry and everywhere else, if we can cut back these regulations and actually start getting a little more energy independent, if we can grow Maine's economy so we're a little bit off the federal government's supply of cash, if Maine can start to stand on her own 2 feet, it'll be great for our entire state. District 49 is a big fishing community, and I like to say the cliche line, a rising tide rises all ships.
Mm. Now, what could you do specifically to help the fishing industry? You brought that up. I know that's going to be a big part of your race. Now that you said that, what can you do to help the fishermen?
Yeah. First things first. Again, I'm from Portland, right? I've been lobstering once in my life, and I got blood poisoning. So that's why there was, yeah, that's why there was never a twice. I got a big sign that said it wasn't for me. So, but that's not to say I don't have friends here. A lot. I mean, how can you live in Maine and not have friends that are lobstermen?
Sure.
Or women. So I've already started talking to them. I've already started holding events in towns, and I've already begun reaching out. And first things first, if you're going to help a lobsterman, you need to talk to a lobsterman. I am so tired of these people in Augusta just cramming down feel-good legislation, or what they think is feel-good legislation, and not really knowing, and not ever talking to the people that it affects, the families it affects. I want to make sure that what we're doing is best for our heritage industries and our communities. So my first thing is actually to talk to a lobsterman. I actually have a buddy of mine. We're going to have coffee, and he's going to call all of his buddies, and we're going to have a big powwow. And it's just going to be just me and the lobstermen. I hope I survive, to be honest. They're a tough bunch. They are, and rightfully so. They've been messed around for so long. People promise them the world, and then just give them more regulations and more restrictions. And, I mean, just recently they've increased all the restrictions on the elving fishing, and if it wasn't for Trump, his administration getting rid of the windmills, who knows where we'd be today? It would just be...
You're talking like the offshore power?
Yeah. It'd be devastating. Absolutely devastating. So...
Now, on the topic of offshore power,
mm-hmm.
I didn't really know much about it until I started campaigning in 2022. And then I've had people basically tell me that's misinformation. What risk does that really pose to the lobster industry?
So, first of all, it's going to restrict where you can fish.
Okay.
Right? Because you can't fish around them. So that's gonna greatly restrict how many people can be lobstermen.
Sure.
Secondly, there's lines. There are lines between. Okay, so when they actually install them, and then they have to run a line from where they install it back to the shore, because it's not wireless electricity. That right there completely disturbs the whole floor bed from windmill to shore on each one of them.
Okay.
So and then you get the of course the installation itself, which is going to mess up the entire area. So you just have that constant. You got the windmills are creating vibrations constantly in the water, which completely messes up the marine life. And then whatever kind of induction that is created from the wires themselves. So it's this one. It just compounds upon itself. I don't. There are definitely ways to have green energy, and that is not one of them. Like, I don't understand why you would cut down a forest to put up solar panels. I don't understand why you would destroy the ocean to put up windmills. There are so much better ways of doing this. But here we are.
No, definitely. So, energy, that's been a big topic. Mm-hmm. I had Representative Perkins on roughly a month ago. Bernard Porter on, would have been a week ago. Had you on now. We've had a lot of people that are either already in Augusta or running to be in Augusta, wanting to bring down the cost of energy. Do you have any insight as to why the people there in Augusta haven't made moves to actually bring energy prices down? If I was in Augusta right now, I'd be reading the political landscape and saying, okay, I've been in power for 8 years and things keep getting worse. I'm going to have my rear end whooped when it comes to election day. Why do you think a lot of people, especially on the other side of the aisle, haven't made decisions to lower our energy prices?
Yeah, I had a platoon sergeant one time tell me, he said, you know what, the Army's going to treat you any way they want to so long as you keep re-enlisting. And he was right. He was right. And I think it's the same way here. They've got it in Maine. Even my district is heavily blue, which is surprising since I have BIW right there. But Maine is so, I don't want to say locked up and possibly blue, but it is so blue that they feel like they can just, blatantly get away with it now. We had our Secretary of State even get on, and she's recorded saying that there are some illegals on our voter rolls, but yet she refuses to actually release the voter rolls so that they can be audited.
Sure.
At least not by anybody she doesn't pre-approve of. So I would say there's either a lot of corruption, a lot of nefariousness, or like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of people who still believe that the Democratic Party is the same party of yesteryear. And I think that's a lot to do with the older generation. Maine's biggest voting bloc is over 65,
Yep.
right? And it's an old state. And so a lot of these people remember the Democrats of the JFK era. And those are their heyday, and trying to convince them now that the people that they've been told for so long that Nazis are actually the good guys, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, education is key, but it's tough.
Sure. Okay, so you said your district is pretty blue. You're from the Portland area, relatively. I mean, you could just notice the difference when you're down there in terms of age demographics. I'm from the Piscataquis County area. There's a lot less people my age. What would be your message to someone my age, someone in college, who is either politically moderate or leans left? What would you say to them to bring them to your side?
Well, so at your age, I'd make a couple of assumptions. Cost of education is important. Cost of housing is important. Career opportunities are important. So, because at your age, I would say you're about starting off a career, or at least your first career. You might switch careers later on. You're definitely coming out with some kind of educational debt, which is going to be, have an interest rate assigned to it or whatever. So, I would say look at your future. Look at what's going on. It's easy to get lost in the frustrations of the world, and it's easy just to only read the headlines and never read the actual story. It's they call that clickbait or fake news or whatever it is you want to call it. Look around. Look at what Maine is doing to their children. Like, there are so many people right now leaving Maine. Matter of fact, your age. That's our number one working block is 18 to 35, and they're leaving Maine in droves. They're just leaving because there's no opportunities here. Who wants to raise a kid here that can come home different than when it went to school? Who wants to? Who wants to? They people are shut out of their kids' medical records when they turn 13. Your kid is not done growing, not done being your responsibility. You know what I mean? That kid is still under your care. So I see all these people leaving in droves, and taxes are way too high. Why would you want to stay here? If you can shop states, so to speak, you would go to what's going to pay you the most, what has the lowest cost of living, and what has the best opportunities, who's got the best schools. You're not going to move to a state that has that their school system is like 47th in the country, because you're not going to want to set your kid up for failure. That just doesn't make sense. You want good schools for your kids. So I would have to say, take all that into thought when you go out to vote, and why are we where we're at. If you keep voting the same way, it's never going to change. I would highly recommend jumping on, giving these Republicans a good fair swing at it. Sometimes they get in power and they don't know what to do with it because they've never been in power. Give them a minute.
You're not wrong.
Give them a minute. Yeah, I mean, granted, we don't have the supermajority, but we can do a lot more at the federal level than we have been. I think they get locked up a lot in almost like analysis paralysis kind of thing. But I would love to bring some of that federal success home. We've got our Democrat governor is blocking certain tax breaks that they authorize federally that other states are enjoying. Again, why are you going to stay in Maine when you have the opportunity of having all this other stuff in other states? We have to recognize that nothing changes if nothing changes. So I would that's how I point it out to everybody about, why would you vote Democrat versus Republican? It's about what's going on right around you. It's literally affecting the 3 feet around us.
Sure. I mean, you talk about young people leaving the state. I'm a prime example. I haven't fully left the state. I'm still a registered Maine citizen, but I'm going to college here in Virginia, going to Liberty. I love it here. But the likelihood of me staying, just from a simple financial perspective, in Maine or Virginia is pretty low. Because both of these states, they have great cultures, they're great people, but they're run like absolute trash.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia is doing everything they can to make just about every firearm illegal, it seems. The proposed taxes were insane. Absolutely ungodly, insane taxes. And we're seeing similar stuff back home. We're better on gun legislation back there, but in terms of taxation and the general cost of living, it's skyrocketing. And reality is, I could move to Tennessee right now once I graduate and be a lot better off. A lot better off, both in terms of job opportunities and the economy. I could be much more successful there, which is sad because I love Maine. That's where my family is. That's where my culture is. Just skiing alone, I would miss it like crazy. But from a simple financial perspective, I would be foolish to move back. So.
Right. My brother lives in Virginia, actually. He lives down in Culpeper. Because he joined the Navy and never came home. And that happens.
Yep.
For exactly the reasons you said. I mean, it's really expensive to live here, and for what? What kind of opportunities do we have here? What industries have we been attracting to this state that can really, really pay for a good, quality of life for a family? And those are the things we got to work on. I hope we get a Republican governor. Chances are good we will. Maine has never had 3 of the same party. We've always done 2 and flipped. So statistically and historically speaking, we'll have a Republican governor. I joke that any of them are better than what we currently have. The bar is pretty low. But I also hope, getting into the legislation, I can help support a Republican agenda. I can help change a couple of things. Today on Facebook, I posted about. I was just curious, so I started looking up if somebody were to kill a pregnant woman, would they get charged with 1 or 2 murders? So I looked it up, and in Maine it's 1. Federally, and in 38 other states, you get charged with 2. But Maine doesn't recognize any kind of protections for a fetus at any stage of development at all, right up until birth, legally. And I was like, that's pretty extreme. I don't care where you sit on this, that's super extreme. I think at a minimum, you kill a pregnant woman, that's 2 murders. Right there. I mean, we can start the conversation somewhere, but I think that's a good place.
Sure.
So, for a long time, Maine's just doing these weird things. We got accused of, and rightfully so, of our SNAP program not being on the up and up, and so the federal government threatened to take $88 million. So our legislation just turned around and passed a bill that says that if that happens, Maine will go ahead and just pick up the tab. And I thought, wait, that's better than actually, like, being transparent about the whole program and saying, hey, there's no fraud or anything. We'd rather just risk it all and then bear that on the backs of Mainers. This is the exact opposite of what should be happening. And it's just like, and these are just like a couple of small examples, but the longer you pay attention, the more you're like, what?
Yep.
Anybody doing anything up there that's actually putting Maine first? That's all I want to do. I just want to give people the option, right? I'm from Maine. I was born here. I was raised here. When I got out of the Army, I came back here, and now I want to fight for here. Continue my service, continue my my community service, if you will. And I just want to make things a little bit more right.
Sure. Now, I didn't know you were in the service. You just mentioned that. How long were you in?
So I served just over a decade, from 2000 to 2011.
Awesome. Thank you.
Two deployments to the Middle East in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
My son right now is in the 82nd Airborne.
No
So
way.
there's another Sergeant Hamlin in the Army. I couldn't be more proud. Yep.
That's awesome. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's not really that divisive of a message. That's pretty unifying, basic common sense. In the last episode I did, I think the term common sense came up, and we always hear that from both sides.
Yep.
But we don't really know what that means. But I really think if you use the term common sense and you're referring to bringing the cost of living down, bringing opportunities to a state, and making education better, I don't really see where that isn't common sense. And I really hope that unifies the communities back home. I don't want to leave the state full-time when I graduate, but I want to be able to raise a family. I want to be able to have a successful future, and currently Maine is not offering that. So hopefully individuals such as yourself and Representative Perkins and Bernard Porter and a whole bunch of other folks and other people will be bringing in. Representative Falkingham most likely will be here on the show pretty soon. Get all of you guys elected, and not just by a slim majority. We'll get a massive majority and make it so we can turn this state around. So
Right. I said the same thing. I considered leaving the state of Maine, and just the fact that those words left my lips, depressed me. I thought, whoa,
Yeah.
Did I really just say that? Did I really just say I was going to leave this state? This is the most beautiful state, one of the most beautiful places on earth. And I said, no, not before I at least have the opportunity to fight for her. Not before I at least, throw my hat in the ring and say, I'm not leaving. Before I at least have the opportunity here to stand up for my community and try to make it better.
Sure. No, I couldn't agree more.
I started a charity event, like a softball game thing in the wintertime 13 years ago. I started it, and the whole point of it was to lower the amount of veterans that kill themselves each day. 22 veterans commit suicide every day. And so I figured one of the reasons they commit suicide would be homelessness. So if I could try to affect homelessness, maybe I could bring that number down. That was the logic that I had. And so we started this little game, and the first year we played it, it raised $400, and I donated that to a homeless organization here in the state. And then we decided to do it again, and that was 13 years ago. And now it's raised about $130,000. That's always gone towards homeless veterans here in Maine and helping them get back up on their feet and get. This is like no state grants, no NGO nothingness. It's just Mainers donating money, playing a fun game of softball in the snow, having a great time, and helping our community become a better place. The problem with that was, no matter how much money we raised and how many people we helped get off the street, the numbers never went down. There was always still about 200 homeless veterans in Maine at any given time. Even right now, while it's storming, snowing out, there are 200 homeless veterans out there. So I figured it's not a money thing. No matter how much money I raise and throw at this, it's not fixing the problem. This is actually a policy problem. This is an opportunity problem. This is, everybody, something happens that puts you on the street. So let's talk about that instead of just throwing more money at it, because that's not actually fixing the problem. And it's getting to the point where I almost assume they know this, because they just throw more money at every problem, but it never fixes anything. We have such a bad opiate episode and homeless and this, and all they do is throw more money at it instead of actually trying to fix the problem. And you need somebody that's willing to make hard choices, hard decisions, and get this done. So that's that was my original motivation for running. It was because I needed a platform to affect policy, one that I could actually try to make our communities better. And lower, for our veterans, for our neighbors, for everybody. I think, like I said earlier, a rising tide raises all ships. So that's really where I'm coming from with all this.
I think there's value in that too. Although some of the results you wanted weren't seen. A community effort for charity rather than the
Absolutely.
government just chucking money at something. It, in so many ways, it's not the government's job to solve everyone's problems. Not that I'm not saying I want soldiers on the streets, but there's so much more value when it's from someone in the community.
Right.
Whether it's a community group or a church or just some donation from a single individual, there's something more valuable behind it. And we need to see more of that. Maine may not be the richest state in the nation, but it's a generous one, and I hope we can see more of that. Um,
More
that'll
often
be a
than
really
not,
good chance to unify our communities.
thank you. Thank you. More often than not in this state, you need to rely on your neighbors. It's a harsh, long winter, especially this last one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where somebody needs to be dug out, shoveled out, warmed up, something. People need something. So we've got to get back to that community sense of well-being, those ties that bind, and remember that we're all neighbors. We all need, we're all in the same ship. So the stuff that I preach about, like you were saying, it's pretty run-of-the-mill common sense stuff. I'm not really trying to throw any curveballs here. I just want what's best for our community, what's best for our youth, and what's fair for the rest of us. For the amount of money we're paying, we should be number one in the world and everything, and we're not even close. So let's try to balance this out.
Clearly, the government trying to fix the problems. The problems
Never.
are still there.
Yeah.
They haven't gotten better. So how about we make it so you can actually live comfortably, and live generously? I know not everybody's a super major fan of Dave Ramsey, and there are a lot of people that are. But one of his big things is be generous. Live financially responsibly, and be generous. And if we can encourage that in our communities rather than having the government try to solve all our problems, that's going to unify a lot of people. With generosity, that's not a political party thing. That'll
Right.
unite a lot of people, and
Right.
we'll see some serious change within our state. So, well, Mr. Hamlin, it's been fantastic to have you on. We'll hope to have you back on soon, and I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so
All right.
much, and thank you for running in a pretty heavily blue district. We need more people like this.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.